And welcome back to Sunday Square Off on our Arizona Book Show. It's been called America's Nightmare Year, 1968. Riots, political assassinations, and the deadliest year of the war in Vietnam. But the worst was yet to come when President Lyndon Johnson stunned the nation in March of '68 by ending his campaign for re-election. Arizona State University professor and Johnson scholar Kyle Longley chronicles 1968 from the president's perspective in his new book, LBJ, Power, Politics, and the Presidency in America's Year of Upheaval. If you think 2018's been a roller coaster, Kyle Longley shows it would be hard to top 1968.
This is such a pivotal, monumental year in American history. I would say by far the most since 1945. And it still resonates today, 50 years later. The fights are still going on.
This has been described, you describe it as the nightmare year in America. Why was it the nightmare year?
Well, it's one thing after another. You start with the Pueblo affair, the North Koreans taking one of our intelligence ships. You go through the whole year. There's riots, there's assassinations, Supreme Court nomination battles, Democrats in Chicago. I mean, it's just one thing after another. And the president called it a year of a continuous nightmare.
And in the middle of it all was Vietnam.
Exactly.
How did that overshadow everything?
Well, it overshadows everything in that the president is constantly under fire by Vietnam. Everywhere he goes, he's being protested. People are standing outside the White House. Hey, hey, LBJ, how many children you killed a day? And his daughters can hear that through their windows. So, I mean, it's all Vietnam. And then when the Tet Offensive comes in January of 1968, leads to a major reorientation of U.S. policy towards Vietnam, toward withdrawal.
And I want to put up the cover picture of this book because it really is a metaphor for that year for him. He has his head down. There's a bust of JFK behind him. What is going on in that photo?
That photo is, one of the most iconic of the Johnson period. And what he's doing is he's listening to his son-in-law, Captain Chuck Robb, telling him about losing men in Vietnam. He was a combat officer in Vietnam. And this is just how this is weighing on him. And his brother also said about him, when he loses men in Vietnam, he just wakes up surly, he's depressed. So this is weighing on him and has been weighing on him for the last couple of years.
Now, let's flash back to Lyndon Johnson pre-presidency and even early in his presidency after JFK's assassination. He was the master of Washington, of politics. How did those two sides of him, how did he process this Vietnam laying him so low after being so powerful?
Well, I think there's a combination of factors. It's not just Vietnam. Vietnam is central to it. I mean, we've seen the race riots in 1967 in Detroit, Newark. We've seen the breakdown of society, the protest movements related primarily to Vietnam, but not only to Vietnam, but to civil rights. There's a number of things. So he's gone from, at the apex to this lower point, and, he just tries to process. And I actually give him quite a lot of credit for being able to manage these crises.
Well, talk about managing these crises emotionally, intellectually. He showed an incredible capability after JFK's assassination, immediately after, for incredible poise in that moment. Did he show that poise during one crisis after another in this year?
Well, he did. Let's take the Pueblo, for example. Again, when the North Koreans take the ship. The easy answer would be to bomb the North Koreans, but what he knew is if he did that, the 82 Americans would die. So he had to show patience, and it's frustrating. He's getting pressured from all sides to do something, anything. And he refuses because he doesn't want to lose those lives. And after 11 months, the North Koreans finally give in and release the sailors.
And that's a fascinating episode. USS Pueblo basically captured by North Korea for a year, a hostage crisis. And we see that through the current day lens of social media and nonstop cable. Can you imagine if that existed back then?
But the problem is with the Pueblo, it's only a week before the Tet Offensive breaks out. And we know how TV and others cover the Tet Offensive. So he would have probably got buried under that. And it was such a year that there was one thing after another. So the Pueblo gets lost in the process. But it's always haunting Johnson. He wants to get those people back, and he does just before he leaves office.
And when we come back, a presidency that began and ended in the shadow of assassination. Stay with us.